So, today we are tackling a fascinating topic at the intersection of privacy, law, and national security. Specifically, we'll be discussing how the recent interview with Wang Fogui, which covers sensitive issues like espionage, might relate to the Philippines anti-wiretapping law, Republic Act Number 4200. So, first, let's start by understanding Republic Act 4200. This law was enacted back in 1965 and its purpose is pretty straightforward. It aims to protect the privacy of our conversations. The law prohibits any form of wiretapping, recording, or surveillance of private communications without the consent of all parties involved. It specifically bans the use of devices like tape recorders, microphones, and now, even more modern surveillance tools, anything that could be used to secretly listen in on conversations. So, what is a private communication? So, what exactly counts as private communication under RA 4200? Well, imagine a phone call between two business partners discussing a deal or conversation between friends in the privacy of their homes. If someone intercepts or records that communication without everyone's consent, that would be a violation of RA 4200, and the penalties are severe. The law imposes hefty fines and even imprisonment for violators. So, in the interview, now let's shift gears and talk about the interview with Wang Feng. Right at the beginning of the video, the interviewer asked Wang for his consent, saying that they consent that this video will be shown in the Senate hearing, and Wang clearly agrees, stating his support for the hearings in the Philippines. This is a crucial moment, and here's why. Republic Act 4200 permits the recording of conversations as long as everyone involved gives their consent. Since Wang openly consents to being recorded and for the video to be used publicly, there is no violation of the anti-wiretapping law in this case. So consent and RA 4200 and what the law requires. This is one of the key aspects of the RA 4200, the consent. If everyone involved agrees to being recorded, the law is not breached. In Wang's case, his consent is clearly given. Now why is this important? Well, it emphasizes that not all recordings are illegal under RA 4200. For example, interviews for documentaries, public discussions, or even recording lectures, as long as consent is given, are perfectly legal. So, public versus private communication. But what about the nature of the conversation itself? The RA 4200 primarily applies to private communications. Those conversations that are meant to be confidential, such as between family, members, friends, or business associates. But in this interview, Wang is speaking publicly and he knows that his words are being recorded for Senate hearings and potentially for public viewing. This makes the conversation public in nature, not private, and that's another reason why RA 4200 doesn't apply here. So, to make it clearer, let's compare two scenarios. In the first, imagine a secret conversation between intelligence officials discussing national security. If someone recorded that without their knowledge or consent, that would be illegal under RA 4200. In the second scenario, we have a press conference where a public figure addresses the media. Since the speaker knows they are being recorded and consent is given, there is no issue of wiretapping there. The interview with Wang Fogoy falls into the second category because it's intended to be made public. So now let's dive into some of the more sensitive topics Wang discusses. He talks about access to confidential files, espionage, and intelligence operations. These are the topics that would typically raise alarms when it comes to national security. However, even though the content of the conversation is sensitive, the fact that the recording is public and consented to still keeps it within the legal boundaries. What would be a violation? That said, there are some situations where this interview could raise legal issues under RA 4200. For instance, if Wang Fogui or someone else had secretly recorded private conversations between Chinese intelligence agents or government officials without their consent, that would clearly violate RA 4200. The same would apply if such recordings were made on Philippine soil and involved Philippine citizens. Now, let's consider another hypothetical. Let's say a high-ranking government official in the Philippines was being recorded without knowing it, and that recording was later leaked to the media. This would almost certainly lead to legal consequences under RA 4200. The law makes it clear if the communication is private and if any party does not consent to the recording, it's illegal. This is where the intersection of espionage and wiretapping comes into play. Espionage, as Wang discusses in the interview, often involves intelligence gathering, which could include secret surveillance or the interception of communications. If any part of the surveillance involved wiretapping without consent in the Philippines, it could fall under the scope of RA 4200. So, in conclusion, while the interview with Wang Fogoy does not appear to violate our Republic Act 4200, it does bring up important questions about privacy, surveillance, and national security. The key takeaway here is that RA 4200 protects private communication, and as long as consent is given and the communication is public, as it is in this case, there is no violation of the law. But the moment we enter the territory of secret recordings or wiretapping without consent, especially involving sensitive information, that's where we see the law being enforced.